Hey guys, welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. It has been a while, and so I have a lot to make up for. In this video, the last series that I was doing, I was going through the different sessions that happened at MSPGeek, and I was going to talk about various different topics and uh, summarize, rehash, maybe add some context to it so that if you were there, then maybe it helps expand what was gone through. If you weren't there, then maybe it helps you understand some of the things that were talked about and hopefully it can help you. So in the last two videos that I did, I talked about Kelvin and his session, Kelvin's session regarding mindfulness, being aware that number one, you may be the expert, you may be the longest running employee there, you may be the honcho, head honcho, whatever. Doesn't mean you know everything, and it doesn't mean there aren't good ideas coming in from the people below you. And being aware of that fact, coming in, approaching with a beginner's mind and with a fresh perspective will stop you from falling into that arrogance trap that will prevent you from receiving good ideas. And I expanded on that by saying, like, the beginner's mind as well will also help you prevent preconceived notions when doing problem solving, right? Oftentimes you'll run into a situation where it's like, oh, I've seen that before, and then you go solve it, and it's not what you thought it was, even though it looks the same. Um, Kyle's session, Kyle Hanselman was the second video I talked about. He was talking about critical thinking and how uh, essentially the iterative process of digging deeper is what critical thinking is really all about. Just ask why and are you sure and what's going on and check, test and check all the time. Um, and how you can use that with ChatGPT to get you farther faster in today's day and age. Um, and so the next session that we had after was by John Strand, who's a fantastic speaker. And he was talking about how uh, he was talking about the when I guess the best way to put it is the fear that gets in the way of learning. He told a story about how when he was a junior security analyst, just starting out, he was given an instruction. You know, there was an incident going on or something like that. They were doing an audit. I don't remember the exact scenario, but he was given the instruction to scan the network, and he asked the question, "What am I supposed to scan?" And they said the whole network. And so he said, "Okay," and scanned everything from 0000 to 255.255.255. And obviously, I'm laughing, and I'm sure that he would laugh now, but at the time, he did what he was told, um, and that's not something that's going to work. And so he left after the start, kicked off the scan, went home, came back the next day. Scan was like not even anywhere near complete, not even halfway through, probably, because it's scanning basically the entire internet. Um, and he went to his superiors at the time and his leads and was like, "Hey, here's the situation with the scan. What am I supposed to do? It's not going very fast." And they laughed him. They laughed at him, not out of the room, but they basically made it into a joke and they humiliated him. And they called in the other team leads, like, "Hey, guess what this guy did? This is John." Ha, ha, ha. So the thing that we don't realize, and the lesson in that session that happened was that we, as the team leads and as the leaders, need to be aware of the sensitivity of the people who are just starting out, right? The beginners that don't know what they're doing, they're asking questions because they're trying to learn, and we have to be cognizant of that fact. And by turning it into a humiliating experience, is not a good way. It's not gonna breed environment where people are gonna want to try to take risks. And the only way you can learn is by taking risks. I got into a LinkedIn conversation. It wasn't quite an argument. It was just a back and forth, a little mild. Someone had posted on LinkedIn, he's like, don't be afraid to make mistakes, but make sure they're qualitative mistakes. And so you want to take the time to learn from other people's mistakes and make sure that the mistakes that you make are not ones that someone else had already done. And I got into, like, there's something to be said about that. Of course, my opinion was that if you try too hard to avoid mistakes other people have made, it slows down your progress in learning. the fastest way for someone to learn is to just try it. Experience is the best teacher. Time is the best teacher. It's not always a pretty one, and it's not always a good feeling one, but it is the best teacher, and it is what will drive those lessons home. Think about a kid sticking their finger in a light socket or playing with a match. How many times are you going to tell them not to do it? You let them do it one time, they're never going to do it again. And in the fight gym, they call that, Masada Tactical fight gym I went to, they call that a self-correcting mistake. You learn your lesson after the first time. And so mistakes are, the best is a hard word to use. Fastest is not quite true, but don't slow down by trying to gather, right? Like, don't let indecision get in the way, right? Perfect is the enemy of progress. Don't let indecision get in the way. There's all these one-liners I can throw at you that'll tell you the same exact story. Bottom line is that you have to fail to succeed. And the feeling of failure is not a good feeling, but it is what pushes you to try again. And so you don't need external forces pushing you down, kicking you while you're down. You've already failed, and now there's a lesson to learn, and coming along and getting kicked in the stomach or spat on while that's happening is not going to make it any better. And in fact, it's going to make you more hesitant to make a mistake the next time, which means it slows down your learning. And so the point of this was that to the leaders, and number one, be encouraging, let them make their mistakes, right? You're going to go through, like, he told a story of training is like, okay, you're a new technician. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to create a new user. You're going to log into the server. You're going to click this button. You're going to do this. You're going to set the password. You're going to do blah, 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 blah. Okay, you got it? Good. Great. Go ahead and do your job. And that's not really training, right? So like the guy's like, next day, well, I think I click here. I don't really remember what he told me to do. Am I doing this right? How long was that password supposed to be? What groups am I putting him in? And then you're wondering why they're asking a million questions. Is because we expect them to know. The trainers, the people above, have basically gone through this thing where, like, well, I learned it. I did my dues. So therefore I don't need to teach it to you, and you should just learn it yourself too, right? They ignore the fact that someone taught it to them, or whether or not they put in the work or effort. This is a community. Let them make the effort to give that over so someone else doesn't have to go through all the journeying that you did, and they can get better. And let them make their mistakes, and don't shame them for it, because then they're not going to. And so the other side of the message was for the beginners, don't be afraid to make that mistake. Ideally, you have team leads and bosses and whatever who are going to encourage you and help you. If you're doing something you're not sure of, get them to watch over your shoulder, but don't be afraid to explore. Be smart about it. Don't be like, oh, I wonder what happens if I delete all these files. Yeah, no, don't do that. Right? If you're coming into a situation that's going to be destructive, then obviously you want to use a little bit of critical thinking to determine whether or not it's something you can try. But at least explore and understand, and come up with ways that you can recreate it or do some research on what would happen if such and such, and don't be afraid to try. And so that's the message that I think that I would actually that John was saying, and the thing that I would expand on that is going back, drilling down further into the don't be afraid to try. I would say that we want to make sure that you definitely want to make mistakes, right? Nobody's going to be perfect, and if you don't make a mistake, you don't learn anything out of it. So mistakes are to be welcomed, but you want to mitigate the damage those mistakes can occur. And so this is a defensive mindset that you want to think it through as you're going to do something. Maybe you can't get someone to watch over your shoulder because there's nobody available or they're busy. It happens. But if like, hey, I think if I delete this file, it fixes this error message on this program. Don't delete the file, because what happens if you need it again? And what happens if you're wrong, right? And so what you should be doing is asking yourself defensively, what happens if I'm wrong? And you don't want it to get in your way of saying, oh, well, then I don't want to touch it because what happens if I'm wrong? What you want to do is come up with ways for where you can recover. That's what you really want to do. You don't want it to get in your way and prevent you from learning. You don't want it to get in your way from making mistakes. Mistakes will happen. They should be welcomed, but you should be able to recover from mistakes that you make. And that's what really makes a tier 2 technician, is their ability to come up with let's try this with the confidence that no matter what they do, they can likely fix it. They're not going to have to go to someone else to fix it, hopefully. They can likely fix it themselves. Why? Because they come up with a scenario in their head, they think it through maybe, or they're just confident in their level of skills and experience that they have. But they go through and say, if I delete this file and I need it again, I need a way to put it back. Instead of deleting, let's just cut and paste it somewhere else. Maybe just renaming it will work, right? Maybe I can copy this whole folder. I don't know what it is that I'm going to need in there. I'm just going to start messing with stuff. Let me just copy the whole folder, leave the original folder where it is, and then mess inside the copy and see if I can do something like that. So there's all sorts of different tricks. You're going to mess with registry, do an export first. You're going to do something on the whole computer. You're not sure what's going to happen. Take a backup of the machine first. Clone it to another computer and mess with it there. Clone it into a VM, mess with it there. But there's always steps that you can take. That's the point. There's always steps that you can take to recover from an incident. And the thinking that you want to go through is two things. Number one, what damage is going to happen on my next step? Right? So plan what that damage could be. Number two, for those things that you've thought of, it could go wrong, it can all break, right? You want to avoid, side tip, you want to avoid like the end of the world disasters, right? The things that you can't control, because that's not helpful. That just causes you to freeze up in fear and you don't get anywhere, right? You want to be specific. You want to be creative with everything that you know about how computers work, whatever it is, no matter how limited or no matter how vast, doesn't matter. You want to come up with specific scenarios so that you can account for and address those scenarios. And the things that you're going to do to address them are, number one, how can I limit the impact of what it is that's going to happen? And how can I recover from that damage being done? You need to make a change and you're not sure what's going to happen. That change, you need to make a change to every user within a group, or you need to make a change to every user in a company. Just do it on one and see what happens. When it all works, test the user, go ahead and do it on the rest. And you've mitigated the amount of damage that can happen if something goes wrong. What could go wrong? Maybe the profile can get messed up. Maybe they lose access to their files. Well, how do I recover from a broken profile? Let's just research that real quick and have it, hey, user, we're going to do this as per your request across the entire company, but we may have an issue. We don't really know what's going to happen. We're going to try it with one user right now. And if something goes wrong, here's what we're going to do to recover from it. And so let me know who you want me to test with. Now you've set expectations and you're prepared for something going wrong, and there's no surprises coming down the line. And so that's the defensive mindset that really gets in the way. Don't be scared to make the mistake, but just make sure you're planned for it. Anyways, I hope this is helpful. I have more videos coming fairly quickly because I got a lot to catch up on. And if you like what I have to say, like and subscribe, leave a comment below. Thanks for watching.